How have you been today? I'm really excited for this.
I'm feeling good. It's been a good day. It's been a long day, but now that I know that we're going to be talking about this topic, I'm psyched and ready to go.
Great. Me too. So the topic of quitting.
Yes, but Michaela, do you want to introduce yourself first and I introduce myself?
Yeah, sure. We're talking about the topic of quitting, and I'm Michaela, founder of Nurture Digital Marketing, and I have been in marketing for about 15 years now, and I set up Nurture Digital Marketing, to help small businesses and to support entrepreneurs when it comes to small business and running a small business.
Okay, and I'm Karin Young, and I am a counsellor and psychotherapist, and I support people to make changes, become unstuck, and basically progress with mental and emotional health.
Welcome on to our first Instagram live. Well, doing it together anyway. Yeah, so where should we go first? So we've introduced ourselves. So first thing that we'd like to do is just to let you guys know that there are 2 blogs available on this topic of quitting. And I'll hand it over to you, Karin, to possibly define what quitting is.
Yes, so I think what is really interesting is that there are a lot of clients I'm seeing at the moment who are coming in some way to do with quitting or talking about letting go or something of that nature. So it's a big theme, especially since the pandemic. And so it's something that's very relevant to people. But in terms of defining quitting, it basically means to exit. It means to stop. It means to leave. And the reason why I think it's such a powerful topic to talk about is because usually people associate it with something negative. So if you think about quitting, what normally comes to your mind first of all?
So when you think about quitting, it's normally, why have you decided to do that? Is that the right way you should go? Don't quit, keep going.
So there's a lot of kind of negative that comes out of it, especially, and I like what you said there, Clara, about Beyonce's new song. Absolutely. It's normally associated with giving up on yourself, failure, exactly, giving up on yourself and failure, which then makes it seem very negative because it sort of personalizes it to you, because it feels like I failed, I'm giving up on myself. But by definition, quitting doesn't mean that. It means to leave, it means to quit something, it means to let go of something that actually doesn't serve you. So it's a call to action. It's actually an opportunity for you to do something positive and to recognize what is no longer working and what you want to change about something. Because actually what we're saying is, we're not saying you're giving up on yourself. We're not saying you're giving up on anything. What we're saying is you're making a choice to leave something or to exit something that it doesn't feel good to you anymore. That's why you have the urge to leave it. So it's a positive thing. It's not a negative thing.
That's right. And when it comes to quitting, I think there are 2 coins to it. Just like you said, you've got the positives of, okay, I'm doing this because I want to gain strength, or I want to move on from something that's holding me back, whether it's a job, whether it's a relationship or a friendship. And then you've got the other side of quitting that very much looked on as really negative, and that's the aspect that I think needs more conversation around, because I don't think it's necessarily fair to always say, right, you're giving up, you're a quitter, you're a failure in any way. I think that's where it comes where this is good for shedding light on that.
Absolutely. And I think the one thing that's coming out of this is the language, how we talk to ourselves and what we actually take these words to mean. Because there's a big difference between you quitting and leaving something, but it feeling like it has a reflection on your character or on your value, compared to quitting something and seeing it as, I just need to change. I just need something that works for me in a better way. That's going to have a very different impact on you.
Yeah, that's right. And, taking that, exactly what you just said, and seeing it that, right, okay, it's going to benefit me. It's going to actually enhance my well-being. It's going to enhance my mental health. And that's where I was going to come to the point of, when it comes to mental health and quitting, would you say that quitting can be good for your mental health?
Absolutely. I think it was Clara. Clara mentioned earlier that initially she felt bad. And that's common. It feels bad because you start to have a bit of self-doubt and you start to question, what have you just done? So often we make emotional decisions. Quitting can sometimes be one of those things that we act on impulse. And so there's a bit of doubt when you're feeling calmer as to whether or not it's the right decision for you. But actually, when you think about it and you think about the purpose of what took you to that point in the first place, then you realize that it's quite positive. And so that has an impact on your mental health, because if you're recognizing that the reason you want to quit something is because it doesn't serve you, it's not helping you, it's making you feel really bad, and there are changes that you want to make, those then give you room to move on to something better and to grow.
Yeah, that's good. And that is the positive part of it. And I don't think that, especially in our day and age and our sort of generation, the generation before us was very much like, stick to it, don't be so easy to give up. Because I think as people, we do change, we grow, we mature. Similar to how I'll look at it in the way that my brand is, nurture. We grow, we very much shed leaves. We very much need to be planted in new soil. At those points, it's absolutely fine to say, okay, do you know what? I'm actually exhausted from this, or what can I change? Because when it comes to quitting, it's not always just about saying, right, I'm going to give up on this, or it's time to shut the door on this. Sometimes it's just about also adjusting your pattern of thinking. So if it's, for example, a certain way that you normally do something, like we're not encouraging people to go and quit their jobs or to go and quit their relationships. But it's just very much of, just rethinking what we can do so that things aren't so heavy and so burdensome, because we are changing, we do grow. So the same relationship, that friendship, for example, that we might have had with someone at the age of 18 to early 20s, by the time you get to your early 30s, that might look like something completely different, how you feel, where you want to go, how you, what you want to engage in. So, and it's okay to have a conversation, and you don't have to quit that relationship, but you can say, look, this is what I'm thinking, don't know if this is how you feel. And it's really important to have those conversations, right?
Absolutely. And there's something that you mentioned there, which is that there is actually a gain on the other side of quitting. So often we focus on what I'm losing, what I'm letting go. So there are 3 common areas that quitting tends to come up, especially in therapy. So they tend to be your job, your relationship, or any kind of thing attached to health. So whether it's smoking, whether it's junk food, whether it's exercise, something to do with that. So those are the 3 areas that we tend to see quitting impacting people the most. And we focus so much on what we're losing, the sacrifice or the change or the effort that it's going to take. But actually, when you focus on the gain and you reframe it, it empowers you to follow through with that and to actually get to that point, because it's more positive for you. You can start to think about all the benefits, and just holding that in mind has a really big shift on your mental health as well, because you're then open to possibilities, and it creates a space for you to be creative. If you think about somebody who's always negative or always got negative things to say, they're very shut off from positive things. They can't hear them. But when you hold a space for yourself and say, do you know what, I need to let go of this, then you've got a possibility of being open to what else you can fill it with.
That's right. I like that. It's just being open, isn't it? It's being open to a new way of thinking, a new way of being, without having that guilt. Because that's almost what it is, isn't it? Because there's so many things that we do that comes with that guilt, that, oh, I can't do that, it's not the right time, I'll wait, I'll sit it out. But it's about shifting that guilt, isn't it? That guilt thought process, and freeing ourselves from that.
Yeah, and not just guilt. There are other feelings that come up as well that are negative. There might be some shame involved. There might be a huge sense of responsibility if you've got children, if you've got a partner, in terms of what pressure you might be putting on them or on the family. So there's all kinds of feelings that come up, and later I'll be talking about we'll be talking about tools and things that you can do to help you with that. But recognizing and acknowledging that is important, because often that's where people run away. That's where it becomes difficult, because you feel these feelings and it's like, no, I don't like that, so let me just keep going. That's not the right choice. Let me keep at it. But that doesn't mean it's not the right choice. It just means that you have to deal with those emotions.
And yeah, we will come on to that soon. But yeah, that's very much what it is, dealing with those emotions. And sometimes those emotions can be quite raw. Sometimes those emotions, and like you said, it comes with consequences, because, you know, the average person is saying right now, right, okay, this job is making me really sad, making me really depressed. I actually want to leave my job. You've got consequences of your family, consequences of your finances, you know, what your decisions are going to be, how it's going to look like if you actually do leave your job. You've got all those things to deal with. There's so much consequences that comes in life and with some of these decisions, and I think that's why it's so important to look at those tools, so that we're not necessarily stopping quitting or encouraging quitting that to the point where people are making the wrong decisions. No, it's very much just about finding tools to help you deal with it. If you do feel like, okay, this is too much, I really need to change that, I really need to adjust that, and like you said, just reviewing.
I don't know if it would be helpful to maybe share our personal experiences of quitting and what that means, because sometimes I think it's helpful for people to kind of get an idea of what that looks like for someone.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy. Definitely, let's do that.
Do you want to go first?
I'm happy.
Example of quitting, and when it's just an experience that has maybe felt negative but also has then become a positive for you.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of many different ones. So one of them being when I first actually, I'll go back to this because I was thinking about it earlier actually. So when I first started my marketing business, I started it at the age of 22 after having one of those moments. I was in a job, I was in central London, working in central London, had absolutely no responsibilities, I had absolutely nothing that was going to prevent me from, you know, that I had to think about doing any consequences, just like we said, of quitting. So I quit my job and I went and I started up my agency. At the time, it was very much, well, how can you quit your job? Quitting your job is the worst thing you want to do. You want to climb the career ladder. I heard things like, you want to climb the career ladder, you need to stay in your job. Why would you want to leave such a good job behind? Don't you think that if you leave this job, where are you going to find another job? What's your income going to be like? And just so many people were questioning, and how are you going to survive? Why would you want to quit your job? You're 22, you've got a great job. My job was at the time, I don't know if you heard of a company called Euro Money, but it's in central London, great location, located in St. Paul's, really close to St. Paul's Cathedral. I was on really good salary, I had a really good benefits in my job, pension, just the perks, lots and lots of perks. And it was like, why would you want to quit your job? Why would you want to do that? At the time, I did my agency for about 6 months, and being young and able to make these decisions, it was actually such a great experience. I had a great experience of meeting other people. I networked with so many people who had taken the step and done things like this before, and it empowered me. I felt so empowered, I felt in control.
Before you go forward, so because you said something really important in regards to lots of other people having an opinion about what you wanted to do, so what was it that motivated you to keep going with that choice and quit anyway?
So what motivated me was the fact that it was like, why not? I can do this now, and I can very much go back to doing what I was doing before. I wasn't necessarily living in any place that was going to be so demanding that I wouldn't be able to cope. I had no responsibility, and I literally thought, why not? Actually, I had one day of it was just one of those moments. It was like, why don't I try this for myself? Why don't I just do this? And I thought, okay, that's it. It was one of those summer mornings. I woke up feeling refreshed, went in my garden, and I was like, right, okay, I'm going to do this today. I'm going to hand in my notice. I've got nothing to lose. I'll give it a go. And if it doesn't work out, then I'll just find another job. So I went and I created my own company at the time. I used my own resources. I was only 22. I was still living with my parents. I will say that. So that meant that I still had no real financial, I didn't have to think, okay, if this doesn't work, I'm homeless tomorrow, for example. So I had a little bit of a safety net. But at the same time, I was still an adult and I had to take responsibilities for all my actions. So I just, I didn't listen to those comments. I powered on. And what motivated me was just giving it a try. I felt fearless. I felt courageous. I felt bold. I felt so strong in making my own decisions where no one was making the decision for me. I felt every day I was making my own patterns, making my own routine, and it felt good and it felt great. And I was also meeting people and networking with people who'd done the same thing, and it felt really good. And it wasn't a negative thing. I never saw it for one moment as a negative thing, and if I had to go back, I would do it again. So the only thing why I didn't stick at it at 22 and just keep pursuing was purely because I thought, okay, I've done this for a while. Let's go back into the world of being employed. And here I am again in my 30s, giving this another go. Whilst having, lots more responsibilities than I had when I was 22 and trying it out for a while. So that's partly my story. So I'm proud of that. I was so brave to try it and then back. I don't see it as a failure that I went back into the world of employment because, like I said in the beginning, it is okay to bloom, to plant and replant. It's okay to try and do different things with yourself and with your life. And another thing that I don't want to talk too long, but another thing yesterday that I sat down and I was writing a new piece for my website about some good facts about me. And I wrote loads of facts and I realized that a lot of the facts, like for example, winning awards or picking up hobbies like playing a violin or choosing to travel for a little bit. I realized that loads of those things happened around the time when I actually left my job and I took the step just to be bold.
Yes.
And I realized that. And then I thought to myself, now in a different way, I'm still being bold. I'm still being courageous. Given the world of employment whilst being employed as go, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think that it's really important to, whatever is on your heart, however you feel, it's important to feel that and fully feel it and not just feel it, but to act on it. Otherwise, you will look back. There's a quote that says, you will look back. No one will care about how many followers you had on Instagram. No one's going to care about how much was in your bank account. What it's going to come down to is you being 80-year-old sitting somewhere in a coffee shop and just reflecting on your life, thinking, have I lived the best life? Now my life looks different to 22, which is fine. I'm a mom, I'm married now, I've got responsibilities and consequences that come with quitting my job. So I haven't, I've carefully taken steps to make sure that I'm fulfilling both my passion whilst meeting those responsibilities. And I mean, that's my experience. And I think everyone just needs to just, however you feel, whatever it is that's plowing you on, whatever's on your heart to do, don't be scared to do it. Don't be scared to be bold and to be courageous and just to give it a real go, because you're the only one who's going to look back when you're 80 and think, oh my gosh, I didn't try that. I really wanted to. I will love to play the violin again one day, and I want to make sure I pick that up, because I sat down and I wrote that as one of my interesting facts, that at the age of 15 I played the violin for about 2 years. No one would know that about me because that happened when I was 15, almost half my life ago. So I want to make sure that when I'm old and grey and I'm telling stories to other people or just reflecting in my own self, that I've ticked a lot of those boxes and I didn't let fear, I didn't let other people's opinion get in the way. And I think that's really what it comes down to as well. Being courageous, being bold.
Yeah, I love that. And there's 4 things that I picked up in what you were saying, which are strategies that I work on with my clients. So the first one is kind of holding boundaries around how you allow other people's language about you affect you. You didn't listen to what they had to say. you were quite clear in, this is what I think about me. I think I'm capable of this, and I'm going to do it. So I think that's really important. You then mentioned, having perseverance, kind of keep going with it, steadily making progress to make sure that you achieved what you wanted to achieve. And then you talked about reflection. That's really important. Reflecting on, okay, where am I at? What do I need to change? What do I want to kind of do now? Is there anything I need to kind of pick up on? Reflection is a really important part of this process, because you have to take stock and have a certain amount of accountability, especially if you've walked away from something where there's a lot of responsibility or a lot of pressure on you to do certain things after you've made that decision. And I can't remember what the other one was. Community. It sounded like you had a community. You talked about networking. So you had a community to support you and like-minded people to encourage you to keep going. And again, I think that's really important, that you have to find people around you who are on the same kind of wavelength to keep you going as well. But I was just sort of saying, the last point about community and the fact that I think those are really important aspects that you use there, strategies that you use to help you make that transition successfully.
That's right. Yeah, and I think that's where it comes down to knowing what tools, knowing yourself, learning about yourself, and listening to yourself. I just want to look at the comments quickly. Thank you, Sonal. Sonal mentioned, well done, got having the courage to make change and try and learn from doing a business.
So I'm going to go on a different path, and I'm going to share an example where I was very fearful, and I still got to a point where I made that. And I'm going to use a different example again. Instead of talking about career, I'm going to talk about relationships, because quitting and failure often follow with relationships, and feeling like you failed as a woman, failed as a partner, all of those kinds of things. Yeah. So for me, my example was, I was in a long-term relationship that it kind of spanned 10 years, and there was kind of breaks in between. So there's like a six-year period and a 4-year period. But in the last kind of 2 years, I was determined to stay in there, because if I didn't, it meant that I had failed, because, I've got all this history and blah, 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 and we've come all this way. And so that ended up in me finding it really hard to manage my emotions. So I ended up kind of losing my self-confidence, ability to focus on other things. I was very much involved in my relationship and could only think about my relationship. It was very all-consuming. I got to a point where I had a period of depression, because I just could not get past this idea of knowing something no longer served me, knowing I needed to quit it, but I couldn't detach from then me feeling like a failure, because then I felt embarrassed. I'd be embarrassed. How could I be doing this at this age of, spending so long in this relationship? I felt kind of a bit of shame. There were so many different things that were going on for me, which made me feel like quitting wasn't an option. But when I went through that really dark period of recognizing that I was losing myself in trying to hold on to this thing that just was not working for me, that's when I finally was able to say, do you know what? You do need to quit this, because it's not working. Your mental health is declining. Yeah. You're not happy. You're not where you need to be. At the end of the day, I had to have a real honest conversation with myself and recognize that I'm not giving up on me. That's not what this has to mean. I'm not failing. I'm not giving up on the fact that I can have healthy relationships. What I'm giving up on is X, Y, and Z that I'm not happy with in this dynamic. So I can let this relationship go, because it's not a reflection on me as a person in terms of my worth or my value. It's a reflection on the fact that as a couple, we are not working and I'm not happy.
Wow.
But it took me 2 years to get to that point. It took me a long time to get to that point of actually accepting that this is not working, and to quit does not mean that I failed.
Yeah, wow. So powerful. And I'm sure a lot of people will be able to resonate. We've all gone through experiences where we've had to make those choices. I love the fact that you went from a negative, what seems negative, but it's the opposite. I think that's just so raw. Thank you for sharing that. Honestly, that's raw, and that's so that's just got so much to it, and I'm sure everyone else who's on the line will appreciate that experience. So honestly, thank you for sharing that, because you went from a part of being fearful, and I can imagine how much fear you would have experienced and felt that you thought, and just like you said, the opinions of other people, you questioned your own decision. It was difficult to move on. There are that's just so many things, that includes so many things that I'm sure so many people can relate to. Just our dynamics of things that we do. We question our own self. We think, am I doing the right thing? Can I do it better? Can I do it different? Should we do it? Should I be putting this off until a certain time? And I just love the way that you were so bold and so courageous in your own way. So well done for that. I think
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's hard, and I think that's part of what I would say to people, and one of the strategies I use was to be honest with myself. It's something that people find really difficult, to have honest conversations with ourselves, and then to go and have those honest conversations with people. And that's why I'm happy to talk about things like that, because at the end of the day, it was only when I got to a point where I was able to accept my own feelings about how I felt in that relationship that I was able to create space to think about what can come after. Because as I said, I was all consumed. Like, I was digging my heels in. I was trying to do more, trying to give more. The more I'm giving to this negative thing, the less I've got for everything else in my life. It was draining. And so I had to get to a point where I acknowledged just how much I was putting in and not getting back, and the impact it was having on my mental health, to get to a point where I could make a choice to leave. Because actually, it was only when I quit, there was no let's work it out. There was no you have to leave. I had to quit in order to be able to then step into what is now my best life. It wasn't going to happen any other way, but I had to accept that first, to create the space to even consider that things could be better for myself outside of it.
I love that. And just to pick up on a really, really important thing that you just mentioned, when it comes to moving on or perseverance, there's always an element of possible depression in there. And I don't think that, whether we are in a situation, or whether it's a job, whether it's a relationship with a friend or with a partner, there's an element of depression that can seep in. And I think that it's important to have, just like you said, an honest conversation with yourself. And when you do have that honest conversation, don't hold back your emotions. If you are feeling depressed, acknowledge that, and whether you want to move on from the situation completely or seek help like you would with someone like yourself, a therapist, so that depression doesn't mount and snowball, become a long-term thing. Because depression is something that, it's very much, when we talk about depression, sometimes, like you said, you try to dig your heels in to your relationship. You tried to give it your all. And then all that led to was the depression. It led to you possibly feeling empty. And I think that so many people, whether on our life today or just in general, can relate to that. Because when you are giving so much of yourself to one thing that's negative, that is draining, you are likely to have some kind of depression, purely because you're depressing yourself from the things that would make you then happy, satisfied and fulfilled.
Yes. Yeah. And it is important to note that, because often people when they think about depression, they think about the long depression that kind of sticks with you for years and it's impossible to kind of work and do anything. Yeah. But there are so many different types of depression, and it's possible to have episodes of depression. And even if you don't talk about depression, you can just have low mood that still impacts you, and it still shapes and changes the way that you can see things and make choices.
Yeah, and that's a good point, you know, because sometimes people don't realize that, okay, I want to quit my XYZ. I'm in a low mood. Why am I constantly in a low mood every time I face it? Whether it's even a hobby or a career that someone had for you or you had for yourself. You know, a lot of people, for example, I want to be a doctor, I'm going to pursue being a doctor, but when it comes to arriving at being a doctor, it doesn't look how you thought it would, and your moods are constantly low, and you're wondering, why am I a doctor, I'm successful, this is all I've wanted to be, but my mood is low. That's a sign of depression, and it's okay to acknowledge that, and again, seek help with someone like yourself, or talk it through, or move on, find a way to take that pressure off. Whether it's, this is probably where we could come onto some tools on dealing with quitting. What do you think?
I definitely agree, and I think just for the purpose of today, we're focusing on quitting with perseverance and things like that. Depression is a whole other thing on its own, but it is important to recognize that there are certain things that we go through and processes that we're going through that can trigger different types of mood. And so we have to build that self-awareness and pay attention to how we're feeling, because it manifests in different ways. So before I kind of talk about tools and things, one of the things that happened to me that I'm still working through is how it manifested in my body. So the longer I took to make the decision to quit, the more my body felt the impact. So I was anxious, I felt very insecure. That meant that I was holding a lot of tension in certain parts of my body. I then was so occupied with focusing on and, you know, making a change in this particular way, which wasn't working, that I let go of, you know, drinking enough water or eating properly, not consciously, but that was the impact. So now, 2 years later from leaving that, I'm now dealing with the consequences. So, for example, I've had, you know, stomach issues, I've had bowel issues, and it's all as a result of me not letting go of that emotional baggage that I was carrying all that time and not dealing with it. So now I've got to take time to sort out the physical symptoms that I'm going through and the physical impact that it's had on my body, to just hold all of those emotions in.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. And again, thank you for your honesty. Holding on to things that no longer serve us can definitely have impact, psychological, in, you know, in experiences, physical. I'm sure a lot of people would, like you said, depression is a whole nother topic on its own. But when it comes to, you know, to situations like this, it can certainly arise. And having physical issues, for example, what I notice in myself is on a day-to-day basis, if there's anything that I'm holding on to on a day-to-day basis, I end up with a really bad headache. I notice that I might tend to hold things in my head. So what I've now done as another tool, before we get there, but in my experience, I find I'm writing things down, so I'm not holding it all in my head, which is then causing physical headache. Because I think it's so important to be aware, and if I'm holding on to something and I thought I've let it go, similar to you, I can experience those bowel issues and those experiences, you know, of having headache, feeling sickness. If you haven't held on, you know, if you haven't, you know, moved on from something and let it go fully. Because sometimes we persevere, but sometimes with perseverance, you have to know when to let go. Whether it's an experience, whether you had to have, in my case, I remember having a difficult conversation a few months ago with someone at my work, and that conversation, I thought I had let it go in the moment, but it actually didn't. Similar to you, I actually hadn't let it go until a few months later. I was having physical build up from that situation, and I thought I'd let it go. It was, we're in the new year. It was a few months ago. I thought I'd let it go. I thought I'd moved forward. I thought I'd persevered. But at the time, it was still building up a physical, well, headache, feeling unwell. All of that can build up if we don't let go of things that no longer serve us in a way where we actually move on from it. We face it and move on from it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that you mentioned earlier writing things down, because that is definitely a tool that I think is really helpful with this topic, because we have to have an honest conversation with ourselves. We have to acknowledge the feelings and really identify what it is we're feeling and why. You know, where is this coming from? That's not always easy. That can take time. And as you feel like you've got one part of it, a couple of weeks later, a couple of months later, you discover another part. So it's a process. But taking the time to actually let go of some of the things that are, or getting it down on paper, the things that are bothering you, the things that are kind of taking up that space, not only does it allow you to see on paper and detach from it a bit because it's not in your head, but it also helps you to then come back to it, leave it there, come back and look at it afresh, problem solve, and again, move forward from it in a different way.
Well, we've got a really good question here.
Mm-hmm.
The question is from Ace Young, and they say, do you think some people persevere because you feel that you've invested some time, some
I think you're supposed to say so much time.
so much time, energy, and sometimes money in the relationship or career, and don't want to experience loss of that investment?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's what keeps us stuck. And that's where, you know, all of those negative feelings come in. So for some people, it's fear. You know, if I quit now, you know, I'm going to lose this, and this. Or it might be embarrassment, or it might be shame, or it might be guilt, as we were talking about earlier. So the focus, another strategy or tool that I would say is to change your focus, because actually that's going to keep you stuck. And like I said, with my personal experience, I just dug my heels in. I kept going because I was like, no, I've given it 6 years. I need to keep going, blah, blah, blah. It never changed anything. And in my reflection process, I had to acknowledge, I felt like this from the beginning, but I just kept going, and it didn't change anything in the end. Wow. So you have to have an honest conversation, because actually what is on the other side of you quitting? There is a gain. There is a gain to balance out what you think you're losing, and you will gain far more when you're in alignment with your feelings and how you truly feel and what you truly want.
Yeah, and I will pick up on that actually, because so your question around you don't want to experience loss, and what you just said, Karin, about, you know, feeling like, you know, there's a gain. I think that if you're truly letting go of something, whether it's your investment in a career, or whether it's your investment in a relationship, you know, you invest so much money. Yes, there's an element of loss, just like you know, you've mentioned. There's an element of loss. Yes, you've lost finances, but what are you gaining? Because gaining your mental health, gaining your physical and emotional health and your well-being is just so much more powerful. And that is then what's going to drive you on to actually going down the path of what you should actually be going for, whether it's in a relationship or actual career. Once you let go, you will lose, whether it's your time, because like you said, Karin, you know, 6 years, that's a long time. You work so long in a career, that's a long time. But we always hear stories of people actually who will say, for example, I know someone's mum who just graduated from university at the age of 55. Would she actually say, I have lost my prior experience in admin or whatever she was doing? She hasn't necessarily lost, because everything has benefited her. And that's just the way, when it comes to looking at nurturing, that's nurtured her to become who she is today. So when it's not actually a loss, it's a gain in however you look at it. Yes, the finances have gone. Yes, time has ticked away. But intrinsically, what have you gained? You've gained confidence. You've gained whole experience that's actually going to take you further. Whether it's your relationship, you've got that experience to say, okay, that's what happened before. that's what I don't want to happen next. And that's quite powerful. Or, you know, your career path, you said that I tried that. I've got all these great skills now. Let me go and try to be a mathematician or to be whatever it might be next. It's not necessarily a loss. It's a win-win for you. It's truly
The thing is though, there are situations and experiences where there are just going to be some losses, and that's okay. So for example, for me, in that example that I shared, you know, I lost my friend, and it took literally 2 years for me to get to the point where I could acknowledge that I lost my friend. Because for the longest time, I had to focus on, to get through it, I had to focus on the other things. I'm losing, or I'm getting rid of, you know, the stress and the this and that and the whatever. And I needed to go through that and acknowledge those things to move forward. So I had gained my peace, I had gained my clarity, I had gained all of those positive things. But then when I was okay with that, the final part was I actually miss my friend, and that's okay. And that's a loss that I will never regain. And I don't necessarily want to regain it, but I can mourn it and I can miss it, because that person was an important part of my life for so long. Similarly to, you know, a profession or to a job or to a habit that you've given up. There is some losses that we can just acknowledge as losses and mourn for them and feel sad for that part, but we don't necessarily need to dwell there, and it doesn't take away from all the things that you're also gaining.
Yeah, and that's where persevering come into it, because I think acknowledging that you've lost something, but persevering forwards anyway, letting go of it, not letting it hold you back.
And with time, hopefully, I'll find another partner, and it will be amazing. So again, you don't know. I think part of this is definitely about mindset, and like we said earlier, language, because actually, even in recognizing those things and holding on to those losses for too long keeps you stuck in being open to other things. So for example, there are a lot of people in terms of relationships who will acknowledge that, okay, the relationship has broken down, they want to move on, but they can't move on because XYZ, you know, I'm not happy with my body, I'm not ready, I'm not comfortable, and the only reference they have is that past relationship. But actually, being courageous and being bold to just say, do you know what? I'm just going to go on the app. I'm not really looking for anything, but I'm just open to it. Most people will have a change of focus because they're no longer looking at the past. They can now think about the future because they're getting these other people that are interested in talking to them. And even though they may not be ready to move on to a relationship, it's opened them up to the possibility that there is more after this. So that's what I'm saying when I say that actually, yes, we need to acknowledge the losses, but we don't want to focus on it for too long because it's going to stop you from recognizing what you can gain and how you can grow.
Yeah. And do you have any advice from your perspective? Because I'd love to hear from your perspective on tools that we could use to support us, or you know, anyone who's going through an experience where you feel like you are at a crossroads with something, or you quit something, or you've held on to something, you thought you let it go, like we mentioned, or anything like that. And I just want to quickly say before we go on to that point, we've got someone in the comments who says, well done for quitting that relationship. It's difficult to know when to quit and when you just need to work harder. Me. I believe her name's Kemi. Yeah, and I would agree on that. So yeah, well done for quitting that relationship. It's definitely difficult to know the difference between quitting and working harder, and I think that comes down to having honest conversations with ourselves. Me having an honest conversation with myself, or all of us, because no one really truly understands us as much as we understand ourselves. And I think that's, believe it or not, you hear so much about self-care and, oh, you know, I'm going to run myself a nice bath for my self-care. But self-care is also very much about having a relationship with yourself, knowing who you really are, so you can actually have honest conversation with yourself. You're just being honest with yourself. So yeah, that's really important. Thank you for that comment, Emmy.
So just in regards to that comment, and like you said, in regards to tools and strategies, there is something about acknowledging your feelings. all feelings are valid. This is one thing I say to all my clients. All feelings are valid, whether it's anger, disgust, guilt, whatever it may be. They're all valid, and we have to start at a place where we can accept them all and look at them all. Because actually, if we don't, we get into a point of avoidance, and it's difficult to change anything when you can't face it. So we want to get to a point where we can be honest, acknowledge our feelings, and you can start by just naming them. Just name what you feel, honestly, when you don't have to think about anybody else or any judgment. What are these feelings? What are they called? And then we want to start to think about, you know, where can we accept the situation? Where can we accept that this is happening to us, that this is the process or the situation that we're in? And just start to accept those things with yourself. So recognizing, as I say, sitting and processing your emotions is a good thing at times. Yes. Recognizing that, okay, do you know what? I did give this my all and it didn't work, or I didn't give this my all and maybe I could have done things differently. But accepting what is an important part of that process. And again, all of these things I'm talking about, there's no time limit to this. It can take people months, weeks, years. We just have to be open to start the process. And then it's about reflecting. So looking at the facts. Emotions are really powerful, and they can take us, they can draw us into a point where we think just because we feel something, it has to be true. So a good way to manage that is to think about the facts, look at it objectively, and try to think about, okay, is this just something I think, or is this actually the facts? The fact is, you know, this isn't working. Regardless of if I think that or they think it, it's not working because we're clashing. I'm just using this as an example because I've already spoken about it. So try to identify the facts of things. And then again, let that lead you in terms of the questions that you're asking yourself. So, you know, what is the impact that this is having on me right now? What is the impact that this had on me 6 weeks ago? What is the impact if I don't change things in the next 6 weeks or the next 6 months? Because we don't just want to make a decision on one feeling. We want to actually make sure that this is the right decision for us for the future. So we need to think about, okay, is this something that's consistent, or is this just a feeling that I'm having in this moment? So think about that. What is the impact? Then if you've got, you know, children or anybody that's significant to you, what is the impact to them? Because we have to acknowledge that as well. And then we want to think about, okay, what happens if I don't do this thing? What's the consequences to it? How is this serving me now? How is this serving me if I make that decision? So we want to have those kind of questions about the situation and what we're feeling to help us identify whether or not quitting is a good thing for us right now, or if it's not. It may be that you need to, but you need some structure and some time and some planning to do that successfully.
Right.
It might not be that you make it right now, but us thinking about that process and checking in with ourselves is going to give us some clarity on that.
Yeah. Great.
So those are the things that I would say. And then you want to think about shifting your focus. So like I was saying, when you recognize, okay, there are pros and cons to this, there are positives and there are negatives, there's a point where we need to focus on what it is we want to achieve. If I kept thinking about all the things, all the difficulty of leaving a relationship and becoming a single parent, I probably wouldn't have done it. I had to shift my focus. My focus was, I want peace. I want to be happy. I want to be comfortable with myself again. I don't want to feel insecure. So those things I have to focus on. That has got to be the reason that motivates me to follow through with this.
Yes.
So really think about what is it that you need to focus on to get you through this time, because it can't be the things that are holding you there.
Yeah. And when it just on that point, when it comes to what do you focus on, that's both, would you say, for example, you know, would that be another hobby? Could that be an actual spending some time by yourself, watching, you know, doing what you enjoy, so that you're taking yourself away from that?
or would it be look like something else? What would what you focus on look like in terms of this conversation?
So the first thing is to identify what it is you're focusing on, because the things that you're referring to are all ways to keep your focus, but they're not the focus itself. So my focus isn't going to be, for example, lots of self-care and pampering, because that's temporary. Okay. My focus is I want to feel more confident, or I want to feel what did I say earlier? I want to have peace of mind. Yeah. So when I identify what the focus is, then I can think about how do I accomplish that.
Right.
And when you start to feel more empowered, because you recognize you have choices. I can actually make some choices about how I go about this. So, you know, it might be, yes, that I need to take a step back from work, or that I need to start to think about other streams of income if we're talking about quitting a job. It may be if we're talking about relationship, I need to think about, okay, if there's tied finances, or if there's, you know, children involved, how can I do this in a way that is going to not impact things too drastically, or in a way that feels comfortable to me, that I can manage? Because sometimes there are situations where you just have to cut it off. Sometimes there are situations where you need a bit more structure around it. Somebody mentioned long-term SMART goals. Yes, SMART goals can also be helpful in thinking about that. Yeah. And going through those letters. And then we want to think about, okay, how do I again resource myself? So do I need my community to support me, you know, so I can keep my focus? Do I need people to help me figure out, you know, the finances, or do I need people to just give me a listening ear? Do I need somebody to help me work out if there's anything that I've missed when I make this change? So think about what's going to resource you. Do I need to just give myself some time to actually think? Do I need to take myself away? So when you think about what your focus is and you identify it, then you can start to identify what can help you get there.
Right, I absolutely love that. Thank you for clarifying that, because I wanted to realize, okay, is this basically tapping into some self-care? But like you said, that's just a way of dealing with it that's temporary. So when you think of your, you know, your long-term goal of what you want to achieve, so like you said, you want to achieve peace. Going back to my earlier example, I wanted to achieve an opportunity to just to stand on my own feet, just to be bold and to try something new, regardless of what other people thought. And then I focused on that, how I wanted to feel. And that's what motivated me to make those decisions. And I think you're right in terms of where's your focus and what do you want to achieve. And then the comment that we just had earlier from Shena, thank you, long-term SMART goals. So yes, you can make some long-term SMART goals, would you say, as your focus, isn't it? And then move on from there. So thank you so much for sharing those tools and how to deal with that.
The other thing that I would mention is around boundaries as well. Boundaries are really important. And, you know, some people have boundaries. Some people have really good boundaries. Some people have poor boundaries. Some people don't have boundaries. So it's about also thinking about, okay, what physical action, what physical things do I need to help me through this process as well when you're thinking about quitting anything. So for me, I needed physical space. I needed to not have any contact. Doesn't matter how anybody else felt about it. I needed complete separation. I needed everything sorted out. I needed that person away from my space. That's a boundary that I had for me. Yes, that was difficult. It affected my daughter, it affected the person, but that's what I needed. So thinking about where your boundaries are in terms of mentally, what things do you need to protect yourself, and what things do you need to help make this transition possible for you, in terms of physically as well, in terms, you know, do certain people need more access to me, certain people need less? Do I need to make myself more available to certain things and less available to certain things? So just kind of figuring out where those boundaries are is really important as well. And then it's also about paying attention to your body. And again, this is another thing that I really work with my client. We're not used to paying attention to our body. So we either really are just in our heads and overthinking things and trying to be logical, and then the emotions catch up with us. But actually, your body is talking all the time.
Yeah.
If you're feeling certain pains that you don't normally feel, if you're feeling certain stress or pressure in particular parts of your body, if your sleep is being affected, your eating's being affected, your bowels are being affected, those can also be impacted by your emotions.
Yeah.
So we need to check in with ourselves and see if there's anything that we need to do there as well.
Yeah, that's some really good points. And that's where it comes to letting go.
Can see a comment here, finances by Becky, emotional awareness is important. Absolutely. And what is the danger of not being aware is being avoidant, and avoidance keeps you stuck. So it is important to allow ourselves and give ourselves permission to feel things, to acknowledge it, to work through it. Some people need support with that. That's okay. Not everybody can do that on their own. That's why we have therapists and coaches and, you know, that whole profession and wealth of information out there. But we can't keep ignoring it and avoiding it, because it manifests in other ways.
Yes, that's right. And it comes back to our earlier point, for anyone who wasn't with us earlier, when we were talking about setting those boundaries and having those honest conversations with yourself. Because as Becky said, emotional awareness is important. And emotional awareness, I believe, correct me, you know, you might disagree, but emotional awareness comes from having a good relationship with yourself. Because being someone who has a relationship with God, I feel like if I can't, how can I have a relationship with God if I don't know myself? But like you said, not everyone, this doesn't come easy to everyone, and it can take a long time. And I think that, even as we said earlier in our conversation, we change all the time. We're constantly changing. We are almost like, I love the idea of plants, which is why my business is very much focused around nurturing, because evolve. They really, really do evolve. They go through seasons of growth. They go through seasons of non-growth. They go through seasons of drought, of needing more watering, replanting, repotting. And there's just so much to it. So we have to know ourselves, be emotionally aware and emotionally in tune with who we are, with what affects us, how we're persevering. Are we persevering for the right reasons? Are we persevering in a way that's benefiting us? Or are we thinking we're persevering, but really all we're doing, like you said earlier, is just sinking our heels in and, you know, trying to hold on to something.
Yeah. So I feel like we've kind of covered everything in terms of quitting, perseverance. We kind of touched on moving forward, but not in a direct way, because the strategies and things will help you to get to that point. But that's definitely something we can always come back to and do another one on.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it's also important to say and remind people as well that quitting as a topic and 3 ways to let go, I believe, we're in the blog on the website. So if you go to www.karinyoungcounselling.co.uk and you look under blogs, I do have 2 blogs about this as well.
That's right. Great. Thank you for sharing that. And if anyone wants the link, you can always visit Karin's Instagram page. Your bio's in there. So yes, I think both our experiences, what we've gone through, there's just so much to it. Someone says thank you. You're welcome. I'm just glad we had such an honest conversation. If you were on with us earlier, I shared an experience with you on when I've quit, and I've shared experiences along the way. And Karin also shared some, you know, heartfelt, real, raw, real life relationship experiences as well. So yes, we both shared our experiences. This is how you can quit something, move forward and persevere. This aligns with both of us. It aligns with myself, because being a business owner and being a mum, a wife, a friend, so many titles, but at the moment in my business, it's all about working with people who are real, who are confident, who are clear on what they want. And my whole brand is very much focused around nurturing and around growing and growth. And growth doesn't just happen. Growth happens from having honest conversations, having connection. That's why this whole topic resonates with me. And then this resonates with Karin because this is her area of expertise as well. So thank you for everyone who joined us today.
Thank you. I don't know, Michaela, if there is a way to save this, but it would be good if we can save it. I don't know how you do that. But thank you for being bold as well and getting us to do this, because we definitely need those characteristics.
Yes, we do have a comment that was privately shown, I think, that says, have you heard of the Great Resignation phenomenon? But we can talk about that.
Have you heard of the Great? No, I haven't. No, I think I have. Actually, but I not enough for me to comment on it. So that's something I definitely will go and have a look at.
Yeah, I have. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. Thank you for joining, Rebecca. We really appreciate you. Thanks, Kemi. Thanks to SH Brown. Thank you, Shuttercraft Swindon. Thank you for joining. We hope you found this so helpful. Karin, can you try to save it from your end, because I think you started it. Maybe you can, maybe that's how I can't see anything.
I will have a look.
All your comments mean so much. Earlier, sitting and processing emotions is a good thing at times, 100%. So all your comments have just been wonderful, and they have been. And Kemi says, thank you for the pearls of wisdom. And we hope you found it so helpful, because Karin is an expert in doing her thing. So if you ever want to check her out as well, just have a look at her website. I think she's so good that she's fully booked.
I am fully booked, but there are more slots coming in September. So, but I'm always open. My DMs are always open for questions, and to support people where I can. And hopefully, I will do more lives. So we'll get talking again.
Yeah. So we'll see you soon, hopefully, everyone. So thank you for joining. Stay blessed, stay well, keep persevering, be mindful about what you're quitting, and move forward in the ways that you should and need to.
Yes.
Thank you very much.